Hi, everybody, and welcome to this recorded interview. It's not really an interview, though. It's kind of a workshopping session with geology professor Jeff Tepper. Jeff, what's the weather like today over there in Tacoma, Washington?
Liquid sunshine and some scattered clouds, just
Well, you
like a
want to,
normal December day on the west side.
there you go. Perfect. Well, thank you for your time on a Monday afternoon. This is unusual. I want to show one document with you, and you don't know what I'm going to share with you, but the rough idea is I'd like to try to learn from you about how to plan for this upcoming Thursday's episode. And I have a rough plan, and I want to make sure I'm not missing out on some major themes that could be thrown into this. Or we can even talk about what the theme of the upcoming episode would be.
Okay.
And and viewers, this is episode F that will be happening this coming Thursday, December 19th. If you happen to be watching this before then or after the fact, maybe just be fun to see how we're trying to flesh this out. But Jeff is the expert with many of these units. He's got a paper on almost every one of these formations. And so we're going to take advantage of this. So, Jeff, let me try to share my screen. It
Okay.
might be awkward, but we're going to try anyway. And, oh, hey, we went right to it, I think. Are you seeing the
I
document
see it.
camera?
Yeah. No, I see your
Okay,
screen. Yeah.
beautiful. Okay, Jeff, um, can you read this first of all,
No,
more or
actually,
less?
I think you showed it maybe at the end of episode E, and I've seen
Yeah.
it somewhere recently. Anyway,
Okay.
yes.
So my general idea is that I'd like to lay out on Thursday a bunch of field data, rock types, ages that are in this window between the accretion of Silesia starting 51 million years ago and the birth of the Cascade at the volcanic arc 46 million years ago. And this is coming directly from you, these key numbers here.
Okay.
And let me just quickly, if you can't read this or viewers can't read what I've written, I'll just do a little roll call, and I'd like for a couple of obvious omissions that would fit into this window, and we can talk about what needs to be included or not. But here's my thought. I've got some near trench magmas out at the coast, some near trench magmas at Vancouver Island,
Hmm.
and Pilchuck magmas or lavas, also near trench magmas. I just did an interview with Erin Donaghy. She was talking about the Aldwell and the Lyell formations out in the Olympic Peninsula, and of course the crescent basalt, which we know as Silesia. But geographically, I'm coming inland now, and I've got the basalt of Summit Creek, and I guess the sandstone of Summit Creek as
Right.
well at
Right.
White Pass. I've got the Barlow Pass volcanics. I know nothing. I know you did some work at Peel Point. We did a video there, you and I, during the pandemic. The Chuckanut Formation is the same time as the Swak Formation, is the same as the Menashtash Formation, I guess. Silver Pass Volcanics, a little bit younger than the Swak. Teanaway Formation, Roslyn Formation, Basalta Frost Mountain, Natchez Formation, Chumstick Formation. So at least at this first order pass, is that kind of a comprehensive roll call, or are there a couple of formations that would naturally fit with those guys?
Okay. So a couple of things. The Lyell formation is actually the Lyre, Lyre.
Thank you. Okay. Lyre. Thank you.
And I don't, you and I went to PO Point. I don't really know exactly how PO Point fits in the story, but I think it's a little far east to be part
Oh,
of the same story that includes Teanaway, Barlow Pass, Frost Mountain. So
good. Well,
I would,
let me stop.
and
Let me
okay,
stop you right there. So, um, I'm not including your rollback story, I don't
right.
think.
No,
And
I agree.
so I think the headline here, I might even label the episode something like Breakoff Belt Formations or something like that. Is that the main headline you see for all these guys collectively telling a particular story?
I think so, because if those ages you have for the igneous rocks are all clustered in that 51 to 49
Yeah,
window, which is given where these are farther west, those are too old to be part of the rollback story as I would tell it.
good. So just continuing to workshop with the main narratives, we're too old. We have lavas, but we're too old for the Cascade volcanic arc.
Correct.
And what other choices do you have? Like if it's 20 years ago, what do you even do with these Barlow Pass volcanics? Do you have any historical context for this? What were people saying about why those lavas at Summit Creek or Barlow Pass were
Um,
even there in 1985?
the short answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say that some of these were not very well dated, so it's likely that they were viewed as, and we didn't really know when the Cascade Arc began either. So
Aha.
my guess, and this is a guess, and somebody else might know more, but my guess is that these were viewed as early Cascade Arc
Ha.
based on
Okay.
where they are. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to be risky and stop my share for a second. That seems important to me. I hadn't really thought about that. So you show up at UPS, University of Puget Sound, in the early 2000s. Um, I don't think, would you mind telling that story again? Like how you got interested in the Eocene? You've done it in
So
other forms, but like why you've spent so much time with those formations that we're going to come back to in a second, but you knew none of that stuff, I don't think, correct?
this is the story I sent you in an email last night.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Okay.
I might even
Well,
read that on Thursday.
okay. So it was serendipity 100% that I arrived at the University of Puget Sound in 2001 in the fall. And so the first time I taught igneous petrology was in this winter semester, spring semester, but in the winter of 2002.
Yeah,
And I was looking for some place that students could collect samples in the field for a project. And you obviously couldn't go to the North Cascades in January. So my colleague Ken Clark, whom we've mentioned before, did his master's thesis over sort of in the Bremerton area. And he said, well, there's some rocks over here you could look at. And one of them was this hornblende andesite, which everything else was part of the crescent. Everything else was part of Silesia. And there aren't any hornblende bearing rocks in Silesia. So this was an anomalous, even, knowing nothing except where it was from and that it had hornblende in it. It was an anomalous rock. And so Ken led us up this brushy, overgrown, wet creek, which he hadn't been to for, 15, 25 years. I don't know, been a long
yeah,
time.
right.
And we never did really see the outcrop. We saw this fern covered face. And at the base of the face, there was this beautiful, fresh, hornblende bearing, volcanic rock. So I think I only had about 7 students, and one student grabbed this rock and said, "This one's mine," because they were sort of on the fly picking, because each student was going to analyze one or more samples, and then we would pool all the data. So this student grabbed this sample, and the serendipity part is that I had assigned the class, each student, a paper to read from a journal to then summarize to the class. I just wanted them to read some scientific literature. And I had given one student this adakite paper, the original adakite paper by DeFont and Drum in 1990 was in Nature. And so I guess to help guide, make sure things went smoothly, I read this paper again and I
Yeah.
thought, well, this is interesting. But then we got our chemical analyses back from this sample and I thought, wow, that's an adakite. And so, and I didn't really know anything about adakites at that point, but that was, so intriguing. So then Ken and I went out in the field and found more adakite dikes, and we got New Mexico Tech has an argon lab, and so they were willing, just basically out of generosity, without charging us, to date a couple of samples, and so they came back. I think they were 48 or something million years
48.
old.
Okay.
So they were clearly too old. I mean, I think even then we knew the Cascades didn't start then. So they were too old to be part of the Cascades. This is long before Ray Wells had published his paper. So I don't think we knew
Right.
a lot about when Silesia docked. I think the idea that, well, actually at the time, it wasn't clear that the crescent had formed away from the continent. There was school of thought that thought these are openly forming in a rift basin at the edge of the continent. So really, I mean, this was unknown territory with this strange rock and this age. So we initially, submitted an AGU abstract saying we have this slab window magmatism,
Hmm.
and that was kind of the beginning of then I guess we knew it was Eocene. So then I started to think about other Eocene rocks. So I was distracted away from the Cascades for the next 15 years.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, like wrote you last night, this was like a super profound rock in my career because it totally changed my plan of, working in the Cascades because I was living in the Cascades to working farther east and looking at older rocks, which over time, as I think I might have said to you before, moved west and moved younger and became the beginning of the Cascades. But that um, so-called hornblende andesite was a very influential rock to me.
Great story. And I'm totally into this Eocene stuff primarily because of that little andesite, that adakite. And then suddenly you're going paper after paper after paper with all these students. So let's go back to the document if I can get there quickly. And where would we put that example? Was that just one solitary dike, or was that part of a formation at 48 million years ago?
It's mapped. Some similar rocks are mapped as being part of the Lyre formation. So
Oh,
the
they are the
Lyre,
liar.
well, the
Good.
Lyre is a sedimentary unit.
Oh,
So within the sedimentary unit, there are some adakites.
I see. Okay.
Now these dikes, I think, are only considered to be part of the Lyre because they are compositionally similar to a flow that's in the Lyre,
Okay.
and maybe to some ash units that are in the Lyre. But most of the adakites over there are dikes. Sorry.
Very good. Yeah. So that's in the neighborhood, your location, the setting for your story is in the neighborhood of Tamanous Rock. But if I recall
Right.
from our video, Tamanous were at the birth of the Cascades, correct?
Yes, Monomus is younger. So there are adakites of two age groups over there.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Um, good. Let's go back to my biggest question from this chicken scratch. What am I leaving out?
The Tainum andesite.
Oh, yes. Okay. And do you have an age for that off the top of your head?
I, there is an age, and I would have to look it up, but it's in this window. It's in this. Um,
Yeah, that's
I don't want
good.
to look it up right now because I'll.
That's fine. You know, and again, I get a special thrill because half of these locations are within half an hour drive from my frickin' house, man. The Tainham,
Right.
is right next to our valley, and yet I know nothing about it. So, any other obvious things before I pepper with you a few more questions?
And I would put the Oso volcanics in there.
Oh,
OSO.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have an age on those as well, which is somewhere around 50,
50.
but I could check that.
It's good. Um, and I guess I'm pausing. Any other obvious omissions? And let this
Um,
first pass. You can think about it overnight if you want to stew on it.
the Bald Mountain Batholith I would put in there.
Oh, I thought that was younger. That's down here, huh?
Yeah, no, that's about 50 or something as well.
Okay. Are there lavas that are tied to that Bald Mountain Pluton?
That's a deep-seated Pluton, so I don't think
Okay.
so. I think that's a Mike Eddy date, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Um, okay, well, viewers, if you've I'm getting cocky with my share here. I'm going to get rid of it again. Um, viewers, to remind you what this is an unusual video. This is not an interview with Jeff necessarily. This is not a field video, obviously. This is just an idea to try to flesh out an idea for what I might do on Thursday and then also on Saturday. So my tentative thought is that we'll get a bunch of field data, get a bunch of dates, get a bunch of chemistry, maybe talk about what an adakite is, talk about a few other things, what bimodal volcanism is. Try to do it in an interesting way so it's not just a boring, list of places. And maybe I'll get some Gary Paul photos to tie with it, maybe something like that. And then the payoff would be Saturday, where we understand that it's not just a Cascade story. Maybe even throw the history of this developing thought business, Jeff, a little bit, if we can continue to think about how maybe some of those formations were viewed a half a century ago, and now we view them differently because of the new data. But I guess viewers, I'm saying if you wanted to add a comment down below or email me a couple of things that you thought should fit into this window based on your neighborhood, or even if you want to go down to Oregon, God forbid, just kidding. That could be part of this as well. But back to you, Jeff. All I'm thinking about is the Breakoff. So I'm jumping to Saturday, I guess.
Okay.
I'm thinking of this break of an underlying plate and BADR and getting the mantle shallower than it should be coming up through this broken plate. Is that the obvious main story on Saturday, or is there an additional narrative that you feel like we might be ready for based on what we've done so far with the letters?
I think the idea that the Farallon plate broke off is pretty fundamental to what happened next. So I think that's a good theme for both fitting these so-called breakoff rocks into a bigger picture, but also laying the groundwork for talking about when the Cascades really does turn on.
Good. Well, now I'm going to push you a little bit, thinking beyond this weekend. So now we're not only talking about F and G, which is the main thing we're talking about right now, but even going to H. Is there more than two letters that I need to devote to pre-Cascade volcanic arc? Or like I'm thinking of your convergent plate boundary sliding north and somehow trying to deal with your 4 dimensions that you were talking about when you were here in Ellensburg last month. That's all tied to the initiation of the Cascades, I guess, or maybe not.
I think it is.
Okay.
So there's, most of what I have worked on are volcanic rocks and some pluton. So the happening at the same time was deposition of sediment, and so that's Mike and Aaron's
right
realm. And so I don't know whether you'd want to think about including those as part of the build up to the actual arc beginning.
Yeah, I'm thinking right now, I guess I'm realizing right now, these letters will be a departure. I'm not really doing things specifically for the Goat Rocks project, or I don't think I'm really doing things specifically for the Spirit Lake Pluton project. I'm not doing something to set those projects up. It's maybe just a detour that's just satisfying to tell a couple of major stories coming from you and Mike Eddy and a few others that are just taking all these formations that are often overlooked. And maybe I center it around the papers that we do have. That's what I want to do. Let's go back to the document and ask, which papers do you have? I think I know the answer to this question, but there might be a couple of papers I've forgotten about. Can you just look at this with us and say, here are the papers that will eventually be posted on the website? I know you have a Basalt of Summit Creek paper. What other papers that you did with your students at University of Puget Sound are published and digestible for us from this series?
That's the only one.
What?
So you keep saying I've been publishing all those papers, but
oh my God.
you're ahead of me a little. So
oh wow.
Everything on there except, all those units are mentioned in Contadol, which is the Summit Creek paper.
Okay.
But in terms of a paper about those other units, that's not out there yet. So,
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
are we going to edit this part
I,
out?
no, we're going to
I didn't
keep
think
this. Like, like it. So I apologize. I kind of built you up, and then there's just the one paper. But isn't there the Frost Mountain? Isn't that a paper, or at least an
no.
abstract or
Oh,
something?
it's an abstract. There's a bunch of abstracts.
Okay, maybe that's okay. So let me
Okay.
clarify.
Every one of those units has at least one abstract on it.
Okay, that's there we go. I didn't think I totally made that up.
No, but
So they're not papers, but I can post. Why don't you give us a list of abstracts or some kind of documented thing that you've done with your students that we can read a little bit more on our own about some of these other units?
so you would like to know where the what
Like
these
there's an
access to these
abstract,
abstracts?
yeah,
Yes,
abstract for the Frost Mountain. Is there other
right.
abstracts for some of these units?
There's abstract for Silver Pass. There's an abstract for Tainum andesite. There's abstracts for the Natchez, for the Tianaway, for the Oso.
Good.
Every single one on there. I've not worked at Barlow Pass, so I don't have
Okay.
anything to. Mike has dated the Barlow Pass volcanics, and their relationship to the Oso volcanics is not entirely clear to me.
Okay.
I don't have any um, additional information about Barlow Pass. But everything
Okay.
else, there's at least one abstract.
And those abstracts stand on their own, but they were so are many of those abstracts pre 2018 when you did the paper with Lisa with the Summit Creek paper?
Some are so the Tianaway is pre 2018,
Okay.
but I think Oso and Silver Pass and Tainum and Frost Mountain. Actually, no, I think Silver Pass and Oso are post date the um, 2018 paper. The others were probably out there, and they might be cited in there.
Well, that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Did you have a bunch of these individual projects with a little abstract from a presentation or a poster session at a meeting,
Right.
and then you came through later on and stitched a narrative together between those abstracts and posters?
Well, that's what hasn't happened yet. So
Okay.
the rollback paper is a stitching together of something like 8 theses. And the same thing will happen. And so a similar thing happened with the initiation of the Cascades paper, which is a stitching together. But the last one that needs stitching is the Breakoff paper, which I haven't
Huh.
stitched yet.
Okay. Well, that's the biggest thing from this little conversation, I think. Like, that's cool. Like, if I go back to this thing and I show it again, I don't know, Jeff, let me zoom out. I might have, I might like this format well enough where we have this, and we're just waiting for the Jeff Tepper paper 2.5 years from now. But then I might have something similar for the next younger chapter, which you do have the initiation cascade paper, and then even younger yet. Oh no, is that work? Yeah, I guess so.
Well, so
Or
um, Spirit, yeah, um, Mike's project at Spirit Lake is
right,
sort of 20-ish million years old,
right.
and Hannah's project at Goat Rocks is 3 or something. So you have snapshots of the Cascades over time, which, my personal opinion is people have not given enough attention to the Cascades story that predates the big stratovolcanoes, which are
Yes.
all, less than 1 million years old. So both Mike and Hannah are, bringing to the world's attention the fact that there's a lot of interesting story that is predating the big stratovolcanoes.
I like this. I like this. Whether I stick with snapshot or chapter or whatever, like or vignette, it's
Okay.
pretentious. I don't know, but like this is the first of a number of I'll stay snapshots through the history of the long history of the Cascades and even predating the Cascade volcanic arc. And we may have just stumbled into this format that I might use the rest of the alphabet, where each time we go to another snapshot, we do this same little dance where we start with we sketch out a bunch of formations, we get a bunch of data, and then we do cartoons and other things. And that's ultimately what we're going to try to do with Mike and Hannah as well. That's cool. I like
Okay.
that. So to beat a dead horse, this conversation is talking about the collection of abstracts that you have in one paper for the Breakoff belt, big paper coming for that. The other two big papers are in print, and we will get to those. They're a little bit younger. Initiation of the Cascades. And what's the other title for the paper that
Well, the other paper was the rollback paper, which is
rollback paper?
earlier, right?
Right,
So
right.
you've covered that,
Yeah.
right?
But we will obviously be doing it in this alphabet and just trying to
Okay.
get the major narratives again. And so there'll be another collection of abstracts and posters and other things that tie with those other two chapters as well, or not quite as many as
Right.
you
No, I
have
mean,
for the
if
Breakoff.
you wanted them, I think I have all the students' posters, as I could give them to you as PDFs. I
I'd
probably
love
have
that.
them. Okay.
I'd love that. That would be really fun.
All
And
right.
we get the credit to your students and you, of course, but all those, even those posters, I think would be a really fun way for the viewers to absorb and keep up with what's going on. It's not fighting through, you know, abstract and previous
Right.
work and all that. I mean, that would be for our more casual viewers a much more pleasing way to try to keep up with some of this data.
And they're inherently visual, as opposed
Yes,
to an abstract is all text, but a
right.
poster is visual.
Nice. Okay. I like this. Hey, unless you talk me out of it, we're gonna post this one. I think this
I
is great.
totally trust you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's go back one more time to the document, and then I think we're done. You've got an appointment anyway. Share, second camera, talks to himself. Very good. Um, Granite Falls, Tamanoas Rock, Hanson Lake Rhyolite. We're not including that in
No,
our
those
topic today.
because those are early Cascades things.
Yes. And last random questions, I think. Um, which of these are bimodal, classically bimodal, and which of them are like partially part of that bimodal signature?
Okay. Do you want to remind people what bimodal means?
Why don't you do it?
Okay, so in one of the sort of standard characteristics of subduction-related magmatism is a compositional continuum from basalt to rhyolite. And so it's basalt, andesite, dacite, rhyolite, which is often abbreviated BADR. So in a subduction setting, one of the things you would look for to say, are these rocks subduction related, is do you see that continuum? An alternative is that you might only have basalt and rhyolite.
Hmm.
And that's called bimodal because there's a clump at this compositional end of the spectrum and there's a clump at this end. So there's two modes. And in between, there's not much. And so when I guess, when the idea that there was some sort of belt of rocks that had a common origin. So when Lisa Kant was working at Summit Creek, and we decided that this had something to do with Breakoff, and then we thought maybe there's some other rocks that might have the same story. One of the things we were looking for is to distinguish them from subduction-related rocks because they are geographically in the heart of the Cascades.
Right.
Are these rocks BADR suites, in which case they're probably somehow related to subduction, or are they bimodal? So the ones that are bimodal would be Summit Creek,
Okay, hang on, hang on. Summit Creek. Yep.
Frost Mountain,
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Okay. Summit Creek, Frost Mountain,
um,
Teanaway.
Teanaway, yep,
Yeah.
Not so much Silver Pass. So Silver
Okay.
Pass is more of a continuum, as is the Tainum andesite. So the name alone tells you that that's probably not bimodal.
Are they truly is Silver Pass truly BADR, all of those?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Not a whole lot of R, but I think you could write down BADR.
Okay. And tandem andesite is
And
mostly A?
I can't remember. I think no, it's broader than that.
Okay.
The Tainum andesite actually looks a lot like the Teanaway.
Oh,
So it may
okay.
be sort of deficient in the AD, even though
Okay.
it's called the Tainum andesite.
Weird. Okay.
And the Natchez, I believe, is fairly bimodal.
Okay. This is great. And,
And
Gary, go ahead.
and then the Oso, I think that's more of a continuum. I should go back and look. I haven't thought about
That's
this.
okay. Yeah, that's okay. That's
And then
okay.
the other two things that I would put in the breakoff belt, we have the Bald Mountain Batholith. That's strictly felsic stuff. So there's in general, the plutonic rocks don't show the same spectrum of compositions, at least the ones in the breakoff belt don't show you the mafic end. They just show you the more felsic stuff. So Bald Mountain is just the equivalent of R, I guess,
Yep.
or
Okay. Yep.
and Pilchuck, same thing.
Pilchuck, same thing.
So
So
I, so
why?
you so there's some ambiguity and difference of opinion as to whether Pilchuck is a four arc magma or a breakoff belt magma because the geography there is permissive of either.
That's what I was just about to ask. Mike Eddy loves those near trench magmas, but it seems like every time I talk to you, you're like, I don't know. It might be a near trench magma, but it might be part of this breakoff thing.
Age-wise, it kind of fits with either, and
Huh.
geography-wise, it kind of fits with either. And in terms of it's an unusual pluton in that it formed by melting of a sedimentary protolith. So most of the granites in the Cascades form by melting of something igneous at depth.
Huh. Okay.
Pilchuck is some kind of old sedimentary stuff that's we don't really know, some accreted terrain material. So it fits with a story of having melting in the crust driven by intrusion of basalt. And that's the story for the breakoff belt, but it's also the story for near trench magmatism. So
I don't mean to ruffle feathers now, but like, and I love both you and Mike Eddy, but this migrating triple junction thing, is that part of the crux of the matter? Why you are slightly different opinion about how things are going through time? Like he's sure that he's got a bunch of near trench magmas and therefore that the triple junction's migrating south during this time and you're not so sure. Is it because you're not sure they're near trench magmas?
most of them, I think, are near trench magmas.
Okay.
And the only one I would really say is questionable is the Mount Pilchuck. All the things on
Huh.
Vancouver Island unequivocally near trench magmas.
Okay.
Pilchuck is a little farther east, so it's a little less
Yeah.
clear. And
Okay.
we'll probably get to this, but the orientation of this breakoff belt, it swings around and heads toward the coast,
Yeah.
which to me is paralleling the leading edge of Silesia that broke off.
Hmm.
But for better or for worse, that means it's, geographically, we're approaching the near trench magma turf.
This is so good. I think that's a natural place to end, unless you had a couple stray thoughts to finish things up. But I've gotten what I was hoping for and even more. I've got all sorts of ideas now. And before I forget it, Gary Paul, I know you sent me a bunch of photos, and I'm going to be looking through
Hmm.
those to find these units and get some beautiful photos and visuals to go with this. But Gary, if you had a couple extras that you wanted to make sure I didn't forget about, I think that's the way to go to do Thursday's show and to draft this up and talk about some of this chemistry. And Jeff, I think maybe I just need to do a basic igneous geology 101 lab type of a thing as well, just to make sure everybody knows BADR and how that all works and rock types and colors and things of that nature. But I can see this episode now, and I couldn't see it 45 minutes ago. So thank
Yeah.
you.
No, this is awesome
Okay. All right.
to
And thank you
watch the
for what.
teacher at work.
Well, no, come on. You've taught for a long, long time, and it's so fun to have you in the live chat occasionally, as well as just keeping track of what's going on. And I don't know, at some point, if we feel like we want to have you on live during one of these letters, I don't know if there's a benefit to that versus just maybe doing a couple more of these recorded, guys. We can talk about the pros and cons of that, but having you engaged with this series is very meaningful for many different reasons, including so much of your work is being featured in the series. So thank you for being engaged with
Oh,
what we're doing.
it's an honor.
Okay. All right. Well, on you go to your next meeting, but thank you for your time for a brief chat here this afternoon, Jeff.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Nick.
Say bye-bye.
Take care.